29 January 2023. This is one of those what a fuck moments, and in this one I'll be talking about PMC Wagner. That is that private military operation that is fighting in the Ukraine currently, but they are busy at a few places around the world. This is a private military company, privateers. The owner of the company is Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, many of you may have heard of him. I'm sure many of you have heard about Wagner. But this week we had a situation that the Americans declared the Wagner Corporation as a terrorist organization. Now, I can swear a lot about that fact, but I'm going to control myself on it, because this Skidmark contains information that should be widely read, and not everybody can handle a little bit of colorful language, and it may spoil the content. The reality is that the arrogance of the Americans has got no boundaries, and they are hypocrites. They are quick to declare countries rogue countries, or rogue regimes, or criminal regimes, or whatever. And they find all sorts of excuses and roll in there and bomb the hell out of the people, killing millions. But they are entitled to it. You must understand. The Americans see themselves as the chosen ones of the earth. And since World War II, they've been ruling the world. And countries had no option but to fall in line with what the Americans dictate, because if they don't do it, they will be blown to pieces. Leaders get assassinated, riots get instigated, color revolutions, and the Americans are without conscience. They have armed some of the worst terrorist operations on this earth. They have financed them. In many cases, they created them. ISIS is one. Now, RT, one of the journalists at RT, sent a request to Wagner, and they had some questions for Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, I'm just going to give you this little bit background on Prigozhin. Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin is a Russian oligarch and a close confidant of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Prigozhin was called Putin's chef because his restaurants and catering businesses hosted dinners which Putin attended with foreign dignitaries. Now, something that impressed me about this guy is that you see him on the front line there. He's among the troops. Many times he goes and he visits them and so forth. And there's another thing that the West makes a big story about, and they say that Wagner is actually a criminal organization because they employ criminals. The reality is that the backbone of the Wagner operation is all ex-special forces military people, highly skilled and capable soldiers. But Prigozhin has a deal with the Russian government that for certain classes of criminals that is in jail in Russia, instead of completing their sentences in jail, they can sign a 6-month contract with Wagner and go and fight. After that 6 months, they are pardoned by the Russian government, and their sentences is then seen as done. Now, many of them leave the services of Wagner after that 6 months, but a hell of a lot of them stay. So just to say it's a criminal operation is bullshit. The French Legion has been doing this for donkey years. Is the French Legion declared a criminal organization? Not as far as I know. But come back. So RT television journalist sent some questions to Wagner, and they asked if Mr. Prigozhin could respond to the questions. Now you must forgive me, I'm going to sit and I'm going to read the document for you. A request from the editors of RT channel and the response. My name is Nikolai, producer of the RT channel. We would like to ask Evgeny Viktorovich a question. The US government's formal listing of the Wagner PMC as a transnational criminal organization came just days after its success on the Soledar battlefield. This is despite the fact that the United States has been throwing various accusations against Wagner for several years now. What do you think explains these new steps by the US officials? We will be very grateful if Evgeny Viktorovich can answer our question. And then Prigozhin did answer. There is always a fight between good and evil in the world. PMC Wagner is a force, Russian strength, and this force is always on the side of good. Of course, if you philosophize, then for someone PMC Wagner is good, but for someone it is evil. But this is evil for your enemy, for our enemies. America and Russia are sworn enemies. It is a given, no matter what views you hold. The task of the Americans is to destroy Russia into small parts and then take on China and other rivals, and then remain the largest and most powerful country in the world. That same conversation about the multipolarity and unipolarity of the world. And so far, the United States is doing a very good job with this task. Take the USSR as an example. PMC Wagner did not commit any crimes. For days on end, they tried to stick various crimes in various parts of the world to us. But unlike the American paramilitary structures, Wagner PMC destroys only the enemies of the world and does not commit crimes. Of course, if you engage in the substitution of concepts, then you can get to the bottom of anyone. But then it's worth asking questions. Who dropped the only atomic bombs in the history of mankind on Hiroshima and Nagasaki without any consequences for themselves? Who arranged wars and revolutions in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Mozambique, Central Africa, and so on? PMC Wagner later came to some of these countries and stopped wars with an iron fist. Therefore, if we consider Wagner PMC as a criminal organization, then the United States is the most powerful criminal syndicate that exists on the money of the whole world, from which it follows that next to this criminal syndicate, PMC Wagner is more like the vice police. I have many secrets that upset America so much. I have witnesses who remember how the CIA trained Osama bin Laden, brought bags of money and weapons for ISIS in Syria and other countries. They trained bandits and terrorists around the world so that everywhere in Europe, Africa, Asia, South America, it would be restless. It should have been calm only on the blue dream island called the USA. Most world powers try not to conflict with America. Those regimes that fight back are usually declared anti-democratic, then criminal, and then terrorist. PMC Wagner is not a country or a regime. It is a young, unbridled force that Americans are so afraid of. They tried to destroy this force near Deir ez-Zor in 2018, but she perked up and looks into the eyes of the personification of world evil without fear. It is very important that we never behaved aggressively towards the Americans, but nevertheless, we did not allow them to be rude. More than once, we caught armed groups and American intelligence officers who tried to harm the Wagner PMC and organized assassination attempts. Each time we kicked them in the ass and let them go in peace. Video footages abound. Before being sent home, feeding them lunch and dinner. Therefore, the Americans are at a loss. It seems that we don't touch them, but we don't let them spread our fingers. That's why they get so upset. We don't need someone else's, but we won't give up our own either. And then there was a footnote from the RT producer, and he says, "Damn, you hit me to the core. It seems to have been fully answered." Now, it is important to notice that currently in Bakhmut, PMC Wagner is doing all the heavy lifting. But they've got a lot of support from the Russian army. But you have to take note of the way Wagner is fighting there, because they are fighting the Ukrainian Nazis that embedded themselves among civilians, and Wagner is not killing the civilians. And there is videos, and I've seen many videos like it, where Wagner troops actually pulled civilians out of basements in Bakhmut under fire, and then carried some of those civilians for 3 to 4 kilometers to safety. And yes, there's people that view me as a Putin agent and a Russian agent, and I don't know what the hell else. There's one guy that reckons I run a Putin sect here in Nelspruit, but to him I've got one word: up yours. Fact of the matter is, the mainstream media will never tell you the truth of what's happening in you. To prove my point, go and look in the mainstream media and see if you find any mention of the fact that on Friday the Ukrainian army with Western supplied HIMARS shot 5 or 6 HIMARS projectiles into a hospital in Lugansk, killing 20 people, 6 medical personnel and 14 patients, and injured about 40 people. The hospital is totally destroyed. Now, see if you can find that in your favorite newspapers or on your favorite news site or your favorite news source. If you can, put the link for me in the comments under this video. The reality is, the Western media has been feeding us lies upon lies upon lies, layers and layers of lies. And this thing of the Americans declaring Wagner as a terrorist, a criminal terrorist syndicate, that is absolute nonsense. And as Prigozhin said rightly, if Wagner is a terrorist group, what is the American? And on that note, please, I hope you find this information valuable and get a little bit of a different point of view. But once again, as I've said many times, you listen to me now, think about it. Just think about it. Use your own mind. Think about what I've told you here. So the next time you see negative references to Wagner on the media, remember this video. Please give me a like and a subscribe and a share, and thank you very much for your support.